This is Tech Beyond the Hype, the podcast where we talk to experts and leaders about the latest tech and business trends to figure out what's shaping the future of work. Hello, and welcome back to the show. Today's episode is about something that I know many of you have been thinking about a lot at work, and that is what the actual impact of AI is for organisations and for society as a whole, and how to go about designing and implementing the right model for your team and your objectives. In this episode, I'm joined by Bill Schmarzo, whose passion for data and teaching has seen him write numerous books on the subject. I had so much fun recording this episode, and I'm really excited for you to hear it. It's jam-packed full of practical advice and useful insights for anyone who's thinking about AI and how it can really be used as a tool for good. So let's get into it. Before I hit play on the interview, I do have one small favour to ask of you. If you're enjoying this show and want to hear more about how big trends are shaping how we work, please make sure to like, rate and subscribe to Tech Beyond the Hype wherever you listen to podcasts. It makes such a big difference to us and will only help us make the show bigger and better in the long run. Thank you so much for your support. Let's get on with the show.
I'm currently the customer AI and data innovation strategist at Dell Technologies, which means I work with a lot of customers who are trying to figure out where and how to start their AI journeys and how do you leverage the unique economics of data to drive that. But at heart, and I'm a teacher, and I love to teach. I teach at a couple of different universities here in Iowa. I lecture a lot. I write a lot of blogs, and just released, I think it's my 6th book just this past Monday. It's an updated textbook for my Art of Thinking Like a Data Scientist class. So at my heart, and I'm a teacher, and I love the fact that I have an opportunity to give back to my students.
Perhaps before we delve into the meat of the conversation, what is it about AI that you find so interesting, and what would you say is your primary perspective on the issue?
Yeah, 2 really meaty questions. So the first one is, what about AI do I believe makes it very interesting and a game changer? Unlike traditional analytics around which we sought to optimize around what the data taught us or showed us about past behavior, what AI can do is that it can optimize around our aspirations. We can create the AI utility function in a manner that reflects what we want to become as an organization, as a society. And it doesn't mean it's just reflected in the data, because when we make models that are just reflective in the data, our historical data is biased. It's inaccurate in some cases. It's not a forward-looking thing. So what makes AI powerful from my perspective is this ability to define the desired outcomes around which we seek to learn and to optimize our society. So that's number one. I think it's very forward thinking versus retro thinking. And because it's forward thinking, because it's around what it is we want to become, we need to make certain that everybody is involved in the process of defining, developing, deploying, and then learning from these AI models. So it isn't sufficient that you have a high priesthood of data scientists building these things and then shoving them at users and saying, here you go. It's insufficient, because the people who have the best ideas around the variables and metrics around which they want to use to define what we want to become aren't the data scientists. They're the people at the front lines. Right? They're the average person. Right? I work with organizations, the people who have the best insights, who have the tribal knowledge around which we can use to drive where we want to take the organization. It's the people at the front lines of customer engagements, the doctors, the teachers, the technicians, the operators, and at the front lines of operational execution too, right? Mechanics and such, right? How do you bring them into the process? And so we can't expect them to become quote unquote citizen data scientists, right? They're not going to code their own models. It's silly. Right?
Yeah.
But we need to turn them into citizens of data science, so they understand their role, their responsibilities, and their rights with respect to being involved, having their voice heard in defining the AI models that deliver more relevant, more meaningful, more responsible, and more ethical outcomes.
Right. So thinking from a practical level, say I'm the head of a big organization, I'm wanting to get those frontline people, as you say, involved in creating my AI models? What is needed to bridge the gap between the people who have the knowledge about data science and how AI works, and then bringing in the people who have the frontline knowledge?
Yeah. So I think it starts with awareness. Step number one, making people aware of what AI does and how it uses data, and even an awareness at a general society level about how our personal data is being captured, right? There's an awareness level that has to take place so people are aware of what is going on, how data is being used from both a professional, organizational perspective, but also from an individual perspective. And then understanding what AI does, not just on a professional level for an organization and helping you to provide better patient outcomes or customer experience or reducing unplanned downtime or reducing inventory levels, not just on a professional level, but on a personal level. Because we are running into AI every day, every minute. It's all around us, right? And so step one, awareness. We need to make sure everybody's aware of this. And step two is educating everybody on what's happening. How does AI work? How is data being used? So just bring them into the education process. And I do think a key part of that education process is we need to go back to making sure we teach people how to make informed decisions. Because that's what we're doing. We're leveraging data and analytics to help us make more informed decisions, whether it's what kind of treatment we give to a patient or what kind of work we're going to do to reduce predictive maintenance situation, or even understanding how AI and your personal data is being used to fuel your social media interactions. People need to understand, for example, that every piece of information that appears on your social media feed is determined based on your data in an AI model. So awareness, education, and then training on how to make more informed decisions.
When it comes to the decision-making part of what you're saying, it's interesting because I'm thinking a lot about AI at the moment. Obviously, it's being talked about a lot in my world, the tech world, like tech media. Everyone's talking about AI. And sometimes it feels like there's organizations that are adopting AI just because it's the new and cool thing to do. And so is there a way that we implement the informed decision-making framework so that businesses are first and foremost making sure that the technologies that they're implementing make sense, and then getting their people involved?
AI and data is not an endpoint. They're a means to an endpoint. They're tools to help us and fuel to help us get there. And the starting point for any organization's AI journey, if they need to check a box that says, hey, board of directors, hey, senior management, yes, we have AI. There it is. It's running over here. See the lights blinking, right? They can check that box. But in reality, your AI journey does not start with AI. It starts by understanding, how does our organization create value for our constituents and our stakeholders? What are our key business initiatives? Are we trying to improve customer retention? Are we trying to improve patient outcomes effectiveness? Are we trying to reduce unplanned operational downtime? What is it we're trying to do as an organization? It has to start by understanding what it is my organization does to create value. What are my desired outcomes from that? And what are the KPIs and metrics around which I want to measure the effectiveness? So those are the first three questions you need to answer before you start figuring out where you're going to plug AI in and where you're going to go, right? What are my business initiatives, like my intentions, right? What desired outcomes are, and the KPIs and metrics against which I'm going to measure. So that's the start, but that's not sufficient. Maybe we talked about how we need to bring more stakeholders. So the next level down this process is you bring your key stakeholders in, both internal and externals, into this process. And you work and say, hey, this is our business mission. This is our intention, right? What are your desired outcomes? What are the key decisions you need to make to achieve those outcomes? And what are the KPIs and metrics against which you're going to measure effectiveness of those decisions and outcomes? Right away, you bring everybody in on the definition process, on defining what it is we're trying to build, and you'll immediately see that there is conflict, that people have different desired outcomes, different objectives, and that is the hard part. It isn't the technology. It's building the model that knows how to properly balance, given the current situation, all these conflicting things. There is no optimization. It's learning and adapting, given the current situation I'm in, giving all these conflicting desired outcomes, and this AI model has to decide, I'm going to do this. Think about how an autonomous vehicle, they're not even the crosswalk. Well, now all my different variables are kicking in, saying, and the variable that kicks in the highest weight says, don't kill somebody. So you stop, even though they're not in the crosswalk, you stop. So it doesn't optimize. It has to continuously learn and adapt. And in order to do that, you have to build these conflicts. And the reason why this is important is because as humans, we go through the same process. I do an exercise in my class with my students. And I said, I'm going to turn you into an AI utility function. And here's what we're going to do. I want you to identify the variables and metrics that might influence where you decide to go eat tonight. Think about all the things you might consider and try to decide where you're going to go eat tonight. And they brainstorm, they come up with 60, 80, 100 different variables and metrics: price, convenience, quality of food, experience, what my friends like. But think about all these different variables. Now they got to decide where to go eat. And all these different variables are all conflicting with each other. Oh, how do you make sense of this? Start with understanding your intent. Oh, if I want something that's fast, convenient, good enough, aka probably Chipotle, it's going to weigh the variables and make recommendations. Or for me, like it's Friday night, my wife wants to go someplace nice tonight. I'm not going to Chipotle. So again, as humans, we are forced to look at and exist within an environment, look at all these variables that impact how we make decisions, figure out which ones are going to weigh more heavily and make a decision. Our AI models should be equally challenged to have to wrestle with these decisions in a situation in order to make the right decision given the environment it's currently in and given the intent and my desired outcomes.
I think what you're saying is fascinating. And going back to what we were saying about deciding whether to implement AI in the first place, when you have a big group of people who are involved in making a decision, the way that everyone values certain factors will differ based on where they are in the organization or what they see as being their priorities in that circumstance. Is there a right way of making that decision at the organizational level? Is there a way of making it easier so that there's, if not less conflict, at least an outcome that works well for more people?
Well, there's always going to be conflict. And the challenge is, how do you jujitsu that conflict to come up with something innovative and better? And so what we believe is that you take this business initiative, you look across all the different stakeholders who have different objectives and such, and you boil it down to a series of use cases. And use cases are basically clusters of actions that you're going to take to support that particular business initiative. And those use cases are usually heavily influenced by different parts of the organization. If you're trying to do customer retention, for example, marketing is trying to improve profiling and targeting, sales is trying to improve engagement and cross-sell, upsell, the service organization is trying to improve customer satisfaction. You have all these different organizations who are all looking at the same problem, all trying to solve the same customer retention problem, and they all have a little bit different perspectives. That's great. That's what makes us human. And so the approach that we recommend is that you look across all these use cases, you do a prioritization process across those use cases on a value and feasibility perspective, short term, right? Start small, but start small and strategic, not small and random. Identify those use cases and build a use case by use case roadmap where not only are you marching the organization and the different constituents towards that ultimate goal, but you're leveraging the economies of learning, which is anything that you've learned from a data analytics and organizational and training perspective on the first use case can be reapplied to the second one, can be reapplied to the third one. You accelerate this learning capability. Much like AI models can learn and adapt, so can we as humans, and so can organizations. So I talked in my book about the economies of learning. I think it might be in the economics book. Too many books, right? I think, and how powerful the economies of learning are, that in knowledge-based industries, the economies of learning are more powerful than the economies of scale. Learning is more important than what you have, this ability to learn and adapt more quickly. So when we see organizations buy into and believe, understand how on a use case by use case basis, I can build out my data and analytics muscle. I can build up my organizational literacy, right? That you have that buy-in and it works. It works, but it does take an organizational fortitude and belief that you can trust that we're all trying to work together, even though my perspectives are slightly different.
Do you have any examples of organizations that are doing this well, or teams where you've seen this in practice, and maybe you can kind of paint us a little picture of what that looks like in practice?
Sure. I've seen several organizations. I've seen customer-centric organizations who are focused on customer retention, who are breaking that down across the organization to the use cases for that. I've seen organizations who are trying to address unplanned operational downtime. across looking at the procurement, logistics, the maintenance crew, the design crew, and again, going through that process of collaborating, creating that use case roadmap. I've seen hospitals who are around, patient treatment effectiveness do the same. I've seen numerous organizations do this. It's not, and the book that I sent you lays out methodology. Boom, boom, boom. How you do this, it isn't magic. It just takes a disciplined approach. And it takes an approach that says there is no easy button. I'm sorry. In life, there's no easy button. The best way to achieve what you want to achieve as an organization is to drive that necessary organizational alignment and consensus and belief that we can actually achieve what we want to achieve. So not to get too esoteric here, Anna, but as a society, AI has potential to do some phenomenal things around poverty and climate and ecosystem. And it's just all kinds of opportunities for us. But we've got political leaders who are so fixated on their own stories and agenda that we lose that ability to bring across diverse perspectives, because from diversity comes innovation. If we all thought the same way, by the way, if we all had the same DNA as a species, we've been wiped out hundreds of thousands of years ago, because one disease would come along that wipes out one set of DNAs would have wiped out all of us. But we as humans are comprised of different DNAs. And when we propagate, those DNAs mix and they create something different, better, right? Why can't we do that as a society? It's right there in front of us. It's right there. Anyway, as you can see, I'm a big believer in what this can do. I'm a big believer in the potential, but it must start by making sure that everybody, regardless of whatever age or gender or location, is made aware. We're focused on AI and data literacy, so everybody knows their role, their responsibilities, and their rights with respect to making sure we're defining AI model to deliver the most relevant, meaningful, responsible, and ethical outcomes.
I love that. I love when I speak to people like you. I feel this kind of atmosphere in the tech world at the moment, which is kind of looking at how decisions are being made and the impact of, say, egos. Like when you were saying about political leaders doing things for themselves, I just find it fascinating. Personally, I've been going through my own little spiritual awakening over the past few years and learning about the role of ego in all of that. And it seems like for such a long time, people's egos have played such a huge role in every facet of life, right? In how teams are structured, in the way that decisions are made when teams have a big decision to make. And it's interesting that a lot of us are leaning towards this, like letting go of the ego and being able to see past these superficial identity things that have kind of kept us apart for such a long time and created differences that we now are seeing are kind of arbitrary. How far do you think we are from getting to that stage where organizations are able to have something like AI, have everyone across the board be educated to the right level so that they understand how an AI project might work?
So, great question. I've given up hope in my generation. I think my generation is totally screwed things up. And the reason why I write and get back is because I feel like at some point in time, in 100 years from now, somebody will say, well, that generation was a crappy generation, but at least Schmarzo shared what he had before he kicked the bucket. I'm very hopeful as I talk to the younger generation. The reason why I love to teach is when I look in the eyes of my students, I see hope, not whining, not complaining. When I talk to some people, older people, there's this victim mentality. I gypped again. I was left out. And I talk to the younger generation. They know, like, no, this is right in front of me. I can control my own destiny. We can all control our own destiny. But it's real easy to blame somebody else. And so I think the next generation is a generation that's going to change this. All the protests that are going on right now, right? I don't know a lot about the situation, but I love the passion that people feel in making sure their voice is being heard. Mm-hmm. My golly, I hope we have those same kinds of passion around how we make sure we deploy AI in more ethical and responsible ways. And to get there, I like to talk about a concept I call organizational improvisation. That organizations, instead of building rigid structures, should build swirls that allow people to work and join and solve a problem and then dissipate to solve another problem. And my analogies are always when I watch a great jazz quartet work and how they riff off each other and how one person's taking a lead and then he passes somebody else is taking a lead and then passes somebody else, right? There's this magic, this synergy, innovation that happens across these four people. Or watch a good soccer team play. I love watching the U.S. women's soccer team play. Oh my gosh. There's not somebody at top saying, oh, Sally, you move there, and Jenny, you move there, you kick here. No, this group has been empowered to do it. And this is the challenge that I see in corporations, is pushing empowerment down to the jazz musicians or the soccer players on the field or the people at the front lines of the organization. To make this happen means that senior management has to let go, build the right kind of culture, defining what it is we're trying to accomplish, what is our mission, what are our intentions, training the people properly, and then trusting them to make the right decisions. And so to me, the biggest challenge isn't AI. You can build AI models all day long, right? The challenge is the organization and having senior management letting go and trusting their people at the front lines to make the right decisions, to learn, to make mistakes. This is why I'm a huge, huge fan of design thinking. That how do you unleash that tribal knowledge that's in the organization that is so powerful and can dramatically change any organization and dramatically change society? So for society to reach its full potential and for organizations, the leaders have to be willing to let go. And even when they fail, we learn from those decisions. Failing is part of learning. We can't grow as people, as organizations, as society if we aren't willing to try and fail. Gotta push the edges.
Absolutely. I love that. And I love this whole concept of being able to say, okay, it's part of the human experience that we're going to make mistakes, right? And only through making mistakes and through our failures are we able to make any sort of meaningful progress. Because if we're constantly on a path of not making mistakes and making what we deem to be right decisions or good moves, there's nothing to learn from. So that's interesting. I like that. So I'm going to ask you the final question now, which is a question I tend to ask at the end.
Final Jeopardy. Okay, here we go.
Big one. In 10 years' time, when it comes to what we've been discussing, where do you think we are? Hope we are.
Well, hopefully I'm still alive and kicking and working. I think we have some dark days ahead of us as a society, but I think out of darkness comes light. I think we'll fight our way through them. I think we'll find not just noble leaders who will help us guide this way there, but I think more and more people will be empowered, that it's the access to the knowledge and tools to empower everybody are out there today. Right? The book I sent you, for example, I charged $2.99 for it. Right? I think it's worth a lot more than that. And I charge less, but Amazon, I can't go any lower than $2.99. Right? It's about the price of a cheap calculator. And by making this stuff available, I am optimistic that the next generation of people are going to have access to this and understand more clearly, how do these tools work? Right? It's only a tool. It's a really fancy hammer. And how do I use that to create value? When we define value, not just from a financial operational perspective, we define value from a stakeholder, constituent, community, environmental, diversity, ethics perspective. I'm very bullish that there are a lot of young, smart people, and there's a lot of older, smart people who are just looking for the right tools and approach to help them flourish, both personally and professionally, in this age of AI and data.
That is absolutely beautiful. And I love that. What a great note to end the episode on. Thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure having you on to the show. Before we go, is there any work that you want to promote that we'll put in our show notes that our audience can kind of find you, or anything that you want to share?
Yeah, just follow me on LinkedIn and participate. If I post something and you agree, that's great. If you have an idea to make it better, that's great. If you disagree, that's great too. But participate, be involved. Don't be a wallflower, right? It's on us to take these steps. If we want to be a citizen of data science, citizens means stepping up, owning it. No one's going to give you citizenship. You have to own it. So follow me on LinkedIn or whatever other platform you want to go after. Engage, be a part of the community, and together we are better.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Bill, for joining me today. It's been such a pleasure, and hope to speak to you soon.
Thanks, Anna.
And just like that, we have reached the end of another episode. A huge thank you again to Bill Schmarzo for joining me for this episode. It was such a pleasure having him on as a guest, and I hope that his insights and views inspired and excited you as much as they did me. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more about how emerging technologies and the latest business trends are shaping the future of work, make sure to like, rate, and subscribe to Tech Beyond the Hype wherever you get your podcast. Tech Beyond the Hype is a Tech Target original production.